Nobody in this village will die in a war. No invading army is marching this way. The famous plague, the Black Death, is still 48 years away. And yet, by the standards of the world you live in right now, this quiet little place is a slaughterhouse. Roughly 1 in 3 children born here will be dead before their 5th birthday. A grown man who makes it to 21 has, on average, maybe 30 years left, and a lot of them won't get that. But here's the part that should bother you. Almost none of these people die from anything dramatic. No swords. No sieges. No monster in the woods. They die from Tuesday. From the water, the smoke, the bread, the dark, the plain, boring machinery of an ordinary medieval day. So today, we're going to live one sunrise to sunset inside the body of a peasant in rural England around the year 1300. One day, no battle, no disaster, nothing a history book would ever bother to record. Just average people doing average things. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think most of us would make it to nightfall. We'll go through it hour by hour. The waking, the first drink, the work, the single real meal, and then the part nobody warns you about, the medieval night, which was quietly the deadliest stretch of the whole 24 hours. Because here's what this channel keeps running into, video after video. The Middle Ages didn't need a war to kill you. It just needed a normal day and a little bad luck. If that sounds like an exaggeration, good. Stay with me. By sunset, I think you'll feel very differently. And if you make it to the end alive, consider subscribing. You'll have earned it. It's black. Total black. Not the soft grey of a modern bedroom with a street light leaking through the curtains. Real dark. The kind your eyes never adjust to because there is genuinely nothing to adjust to. And into that dark, or what a clock would call 2 in the morning, our peasant wakes up. Now, most people assume medieval folk slept like we do. Long, unbroken sunset to sunrise, because what else was there to do? That's wrong. Historians who dug through diaries, court records, and medical writing found something strange. People slept in 2 shifts. First sleep, then a waking hour, then second sleep. They call that middle gap the watch. Some prayed. Some talked. Some just lay there in the dark thinking. Your body scheduled a 2 a.m. meeting, and it did not ask your permission. So he's awake, and the first thing that would hit you is the air. The house is 1 room. Timber frame, mud walls, a roof of thatched straw over your head. In the middle of the floor, an open fire, banked down for the night, but still smouldering. There is no chimney. Chimneys are a luxury that won't reach ordinary homes for another 2 centuries. So the smoke from that fire doesn't leave. It hangs. It sits in a thick layer just above head height and slowly works its way into everything, including your lungs. Sleep in that for 40 years, and it does real damage. Modern researchers have studied the skeletons and the soot-stained sinuses. Chronic bronchitis. Ruined lungs. A permanent cough that everyone had and nobody thought was a disease because everyone had it. That's the tricky thing about medieval killers. Half of them were so normal they didn't even have a name. And he's not alone in that room. Nobody was. His whole family's in here. Him, his wife, 3 or 4 surviving children, maybe an elderly parent, all sharing 1 or 2 beds and a floor. If it's winter, the animals are in here too. The pig, a few chickens, sometimes the family cow, brought inside because a cow that freezes to death is a catastrophe you cannot afford. It's basically a studio apartment you share with your entire family and a farm. The warmth is real. So are the fleas. Let's talk about the fleas and the lice, because you had them. Everyone had them. Not as a sign of being poor or dirty, just as a fact of being a human with a body in the year 1300. They lived in the straw of your bed, in the seams of your one set of clothes, in your hair. Medieval roommates who never paid rent and never moved out. Annoying? Yes. But some of those passengers carried disease, and a few of them, decades from now, will carry something much worse. He lies there in the dark, in the smoke, being quietly bitten, listening to his family breathe. This is the safe part of the day. This is as good as it gets. And here's the detail that got me. He's not tired of this life. He doesn't know anything else exists. To him, this is simply what a night is. The exhaustion, the cough, the itch, the cold seeping up through the floor. Normal. All of it, completely normal. The Middle Ages didn't need a war to kill you. It had already started hours before he even stood up. Then, somewhere outside in the black, a rooster gets it wrong and crows too early. And the real day, begins. Because before he can do a single thing, before work, before food, he needs a drink of water. And that drink is about to be the first thing that tries to kill him. Here's a fact that sounds made up. For a huge chunk of medieval Europe, plain water could be one of the most dangerous things you put in your body. Not poison. Not anything anyone added. Just water. You've probably heard the fun version of this. Medieval people drank beer all day because the water was unsafe, and they were basically day drinking from breakfast to bed. It's a great story. It's also mostly wrong, and the truth is more interesting. They did drink water. Millions of people every day, especially the poorest, who couldn't always afford anything else. What they drank alongside it, when they could, was small beer. And small beer is not what you're picturing. It's weak. We're talking maybe 1% alcohol, sometimes less. You could drink it all day and stay completely sober. The point was never to get drunk. The point was that brewing it meant boiling the water first, and boiling, though nobody understood why, killed the things in the water that killed you. It was safety they could taste, without a single one of them knowing the word bacteria. Think of small beer as the medieval office water cooler. Weak everywhere, and quietly keeping you alive. But our peasant, first thing in the dark, reaches for the bucket. And the bucket came from the village well. Or worse, the stream. The same stream where, a little upriver, other people wash and animals drink and waste goes. There's no filtration. There's no chemistry. There's a rope and a bucket and a shared hole in the ground that the entire village dips into, and nobody ever cleaned it because nobody knew it needed cleaning. So he drinks. You! And most mornings, nothing happens. That's the trap. Most mornings, you're fine. But some mornings, the water carries something. And the something has a name that shows up again and again in medieval records, in monastery death rolls, in the mouths of terrified parents. The bloody Flux. We call it dysentery. Here is what dysentery does, and I'll keep it plain. It's an infection of the gut. It causes violent, bloody diarrhea that does not stop. And in a world with no way to replace the water and salt pouring out of you, it kills by drying you out from the inside. A strong adult could be dead in under a week. A small child could be gone in 2 or 3 days. 2 or 3 days. From a drink of water. And it wasn't rare. Dysentery was one of the great background killers of the entire medieval period. It didn't need a bad harvest or a plague year. It was just always there, in the well, waiting for a warm week and a careless dip of the bucket. Kings died of it. Whole armies died of it, more than ever died in the actual fighting. It did not care that you were peasant or prince. The water was democratic that way. I genuinely struggle to imagine the nerve it takes to drink every single morning from something you half suspect might kill your kids. But they didn't have the option to be picky. You drink, or you die of thirst by tomorrow. So you drink, and you hope, and you get very, very good at not thinking about it. Our man drinks. He's lucky. Today, the water is just water. He splashes a little on his face, the closest thing to washing he'll do, and he steps out the low door into the cold. The sky is going from black to a bruised grey. And waiting for him out there in the half light is the reason his body will be worn out by 40. The work. Everyone assumes hard outdoor labour was at least healthy. Fresh air, honest sweat. Get ready to lose that idea too. We love a certain fantasy about this. The peasant in the golden field. Simple, honest work under an open sky. Farm to table before it was a hashtag. Hard, sure, but wholesome. Good for the body. Let me take that apart, because the reality would break most modern people in a month. Start with the schedule. This is not a job our peasant chose, and it's not one he can quit. He's a villain, which means he's legally tied to this land and to the lord who owns it. He owes that lord labour. Several days a week, he works the lord's fields for free before he's allowed to touch his own. It's a subscription you never signed up for, can't cancel, and pay in your own sweat until the day you die. And your children inherit the plan. Now the work itself. Picture ploughing, not a tractor. A wooden plough, tipped with a little iron, dragged through heavy, root-choked, half-frozen soil by an ox, or if he can't afford an ox, by his neighbours or by himself. His whole body is the engine. Every step, he's fighting the earth for one straight line. Then he turns around and does it again. And again. For an acre. An acre is about the size of a football field, and a good day was a single acre. Here's the part the fantasy leaves out. This wrecked people. We have the skeletons. Bones tell the truth, and the truth is written all over them. Spines compressed and twisted from carrying loads no back should carry. Knees and hips ground down to bare arthritis by their 30s. Shoulders and arms warped from a lifetime of the same brutal motion over and over 10,000 times a day. It was repetitive strain injury on a scale that would get a modern factory shut down, except the factory was the entire economy and there was no one to complain to. And they weren't hurt. Always. There was no such thing as a sick day when the harvest was in the field and winter was coming. You worked with the bad back. You worked with the torn shoulder. You worked because the alternative was that your family didn't eat. Which brings us to the thing that could turn a good day lethal in a single second. A cut. Watch his hand as he works a blade, or a splintered wooden handle, or a sharp stone in the soil. A slip. A gash across the palm. Nothing. A modern person doesn't even go to the doctor for that. But in 1300, there are no antibiotics. There is no clean water to wash it. We already covered how that water is its own problem. There's dirt and animal manure worked into every inch of that field, and in that manure lives tetanus. An infection sets in. The wound goes hot and red. The red line crawls up the arm. And there is almost nothing anyone can do. The village might send for a barber surgeon, medieval urgent care, run by the man who also cut your hair, and he might bleed you or slap on a poultice of herbs and prayer. Sometimes that even worked. Often it didn't. A scratch you'd forget by lunch could put a strong young father in the ground inside a fortnight. I want you to sit with that. The cut. Not a battle wound. It's a cut. The Middle Ages didn't need a war to kill you. It just needed a dirty field and a moment of bad luck with a blade. And all of this, the ploughing, the strain, the danger, all of it is in service of one thing. Food. Because everything, the entire year, the entire life, is a bet against starvation. One bad harvest, one wet summer, and the whole village slides toward famine. But let's say today the harvest holds. Let's say he survives the field. Because now it's midday and he finally gets to eat. And the food itself has a few surprises that could kill him too. By now our peasant has been awake for hours and burned through a brutal morning of labour. He is starving in the real sense of the word. And what he gets, what almost every peasant in Europe got day after day after day, is pottage. Pottage is a thick stew of grain and whatever vegetables are around. Oats, barley, peas, beans, some cabbage or onion, cooked in a pot that basically never gets emptied. You just keep adding to it. Meat is rare. A little salted pork, if the year's been kind, a scrap of bacon for flavour. Mostly it's grain and greens over and over for a lifetime. And here's the assumption I want to flip. We look at that and think, well, at least it was clean eating. Organic. Local. No processed junk. Honestly, kind of healthy, right? It was a slow nutritional disaster. Because it's the same narrow set of foods, forever, the medieval peasant diet was quietly starving people of things they didn't know existed. Not calories, usually, at least not in a good year. Nutrients. The stuff in a varied diet that keeps a body actually working. Deficiency diseases were everywhere. Skin that wouldn't heal. Bones that grew soft and bent in children so their legs curved under their own weight. Bleeding gums. A vague, grinding weakness that never fully lifted. It's the difference between a full tank of the wrong fuel and a tank of the right one. They had the wrong fuel and their bodies ran rough for it. Then there's the bread. And the bread has a secret in it. Peasant bread was dark, coarse and ground at the Lord's mill, because grinding your own grain at home was actually illegal, another quiet way the Lord squeezed a fee out of every loaf. That grain was ground between two enormous stones, and those stones shed. Tiny bits of grit and rock ended up in the flour and then in every single piece of bread. So with every meal, our peasant is chewing a fine grain of sand. Just a little sand-paid wood dinner every day for life. Look at medieval skulls and you can see what that did. The teeth are worn flat, sanded right down to the nerve. Now, oddly, they had fewer cavities than we do because they had almost no sugar. That part's true. But the grinding wear opened the tooth to infection, and a tooth infection with nowhere to drain becomes an abscess, and an abscess can pour poison into the blood. People died of their teeth, not from rot, from the dust in their bread. And if the grain itself has gone bad, it gets far stranger and far worse. In damp years, a fungus called ergot grows on rye. Bake that rye into bread, eat it, and you get a condition the medievals called St. Anthony's fire. It starts with a tingling, a burning in the hands and feet. Then, hallucinations. Violent, terrifying ones. Then the blood vessels clamp shut, and the fingers, the toes, whole limbs turn black and die while still attached to a living person. Entire villages went through this at once when a bad batch of grain went around. A loaf of bread that came with a side of gangrene and visions of the end of the world. Imagine explaining that. The bread did it. The same bread you ate yesterday and will eat tomorrow. Our peasant, thankfully, eats his pottage and his gritty, honest, ordinary loaf, and today none of it is poison. He is deficient, worn, and quietly malnourished like everyone he has ever met. But he is fed. And that, genuinely, counts as a win. The light is starting to slant now. The long afternoon of work is behind him. And you might think the danger is behind him too. That the night, at least, is when you finally get to be safe at home. That is the single most dangerous assumption of the entire day. The sun is going down, and with it goes the only thing standing between a medieval village and its most dangerous hours. We think of night as rest. You lock the door, you're home, the day's risks are over. Flip that completely. For a medieval peasant, sundown didn't switch the danger off. It turned it up. Start with the simplest thing. There is no light. When that sun drops, the dark is total, the same dark he woke into. A candle of real wax was for churches and rich men. Our family has, at best, a rushlight, a reed dipped in fat that burns weak and smoking. Mostly when it's dark, they simply stop. Nothing to do in that black, but wait for sleep or wait for dawn. And that dark was dangerous in ways we've forgotten. Look at medieval coroner's records, the actual logged causes of death, and you find them full of ordinary nighttime disasters. People who got up in the black and fell into their own wells. People who stumbled into the fire. People who walked a familiar path 1,000 times and drowned in a ditch, because at night, without a scrap of light, the world you know becomes a trap. Your own village, blindfolded. But the real killer waiting in the dark is the very thing keeping them alive. The fire. That open hearth in the middle of the house, the one filling the room with smoke, sits on a floor of packed earth under a roof of dry straw. There is no fire guard. Small children and exhausted adults sleep a few feet from open flame. One rolled log, one stray spark drifting up into that thatch, and the entire house goes up in minutes. Whole rows of houses could burn in a night because they were packed together and every roof was kindling. Medieval towns were so terrified of night fire that they made a law about it. At a set hour, a bell rang, and every household had to smother their fire down safe for the night. The French for cover the fire was Couvre-Feu. Say it a few times. Couvre-Feu. That's where we get the word curfew. The rule you think of as something about teenagers out too late began as a desperate nightly attempt to stop the whole town from burning down in its sleep. Then there is the worst of the night. The hour when someone in the house gets sick or gives birth, because everything is harder in the dark. A fever that spikes at 2 a.m, hours from any daylight with no way to see and no help to fetch, is a different animal than a fever at noon. And childbirth, the most ordinary event in the world, was in 1300, one of the most dangerous things a woman could do, and it so often came at night. No doctors, no sterile anything. Just a midwife, some boiled cloth if lucky, and the dark pressing in. A huge number of medieval women died this way, bringing the next generation into exactly the world we just walked through. That is the medieval night. Not rest. A siege that came every single evening, that you fought by simply lying still and hoping to see the morning. And most nights, they did. Our peasants survived this day. The water was clean, the blade didn't slip, the bread was only bread, the fire stayed in its pit, he lies back down in the smoke and the dark, bitten by the same fleas, and closes his eyes. Tomorrow, he'll do all of it again. And the day after. Until one ordinary morning isn't. So circle back with me to where we started, to that number. 1 in 3 children gone before the age of 5. It was never one big villain that did that. No single war, no single plague. It was this. The water, the smoke, the blade, the bread, the dark, 1,000 ordinary days, each one a small roll of the dice, played out across a whole short life. The Middle Ages didn't need a war to kill you. It just needed enough ordinary days. Here's the last thing, the part I actually find hopeful. They lived anyway. They woke at 2 in the morning, and they got up, and they drank the water, and they worked the field, and they raised the children who survived. And somehow, out of all those dangerous, unremarkable days, they built the world that eventually became ours. So the next time an ordinary day feels like nothing special, remember, an ordinary day used to be the most dangerous thing in the world. Surviving one was the whole achievement. You made it to nightfall in a quiet little village that never needed a war to be a slaughterhouse. Most people couldn't. If this changed how you see a normal Tuesday, subscribe and stay for the next one.